Happy October. Who here, quick show of hands, who has the new S version of the phone? Anyone? Can we get, I don't, I'm just off for the first time today. Can you give a quick yay or nay on the 3D touch?
Yay.
Yay?
Yeah.
You know, kind of? Okay, all right. I tried it out today. I thought it was pretty cool. Live photos. What's going on with that? GIF? GIF? I've seen a GIF before. All right. Well, we got a great speaker for you tonight. Quick show of hands. Who is at the very first NS Meetup? All right, let's give a quick round of applause to the newbies here. Welcome. If you guys don't know, we meet here at Amazon every first Wednesday of the month. This is, I think, our 38th NS Meetup. If you also haven't noticed, there's plenty of drinks. There's Coke, there's water, there's beer, whatever you like. There's bathrooms just back through the doors, over by the elevators. You'll see them. We're going to be here until 9 o'clock tonight. We got a great speaker. Feel free to get up, grab a drink, go see anything else that you need to move around. It's casual. And at the end, we'll take questions. We also have the slides ready for you, so you don't have to take photos. We'll post them all at the end of the talk on the NS Meetup site. With that said, I'd like to introduce tonight's speaker, Dylan Harris.
Hey guys, my name is Dylan Harris. I'm an iOS engineer at Luxe right now, and formerly at Sidecar. So I've been working in a lot of maps recently. The whole customer experience is centered around that. So I'm going to be telling you guys some cool things I've learned while working in it. So agenda for today, we're going to talk a little bit about Apple's MapKit versus Google's MapKit. At Sidecar, I worked exclusively in Apple's MapKit, and now at Luxe, we use Google's. So I haven't used Google's as much, but I've kind of used a little bit of both, and I have some pros and cons. We'll talk a little bit about annotations and overlays and markers, a little bit about the delegate methods, specifically like the map interaction delegate methods, overriding some zoom gestures, my favorite part, some route lines, and any questions you guys may have. So, why would you use Apple's MapKit? First of all, it's native. It comes with iOS. Second of all, it's free. Google actually charges you for a lot of the services that you use. So if you want to use Google's Places or their routes or their geocoding, that all costs money if you use any more than a test number. Also, the docs are kind of Apple style. You'll recognize them and they'll be similar to all of the UIKit docs that you've been reading for iOS. So why use Google's map view? Well, it's Google Maps. So Google Maps is really high quality. It has lots of quantity, like we all know this. I was in Belize last year and I opened up my Apple Maps app and it didn't have any roads. So, if you're doing anything like international, then you probably want to have Google Maps. Also, Google has terms of service. They don't want you using any of their stuff on other maps. Even if you use their stuff, you have to give them attribution and make sure you have their powered by Google. We're figuring that out as we speak. Also, Google has a little bit more customizability. Just because they're working on it a little bit faster and making more updates. They're not tied with iOS updates. We're going to talk a little bit about map view annotations. If you guys don't know, annotations are like those pins on the map. They're always the same size no matter what the zoom is. So you zoom in, you zoom out, they're the same, and they're just tied to a coordinate. There's a two-step process to add them to your map. First, you have to kind of package up the information that you want, and then it kind of works like a table view, where when the pin is going to be shown on screen, Apple Maps kind of calls the view for annotation, and then it figures out what color it's going to be, how big it's going to be, and all of that information. Pretty simple. Then with overlays, they're good for covering like larger swaths of map. Here's like a circle overlay that actually zooms with the map. So if you zoom in and out, then it's going to stay, the border is going to be on the same place on the map no matter what you zoom at. Overlays don't really look so good at far zoom levels because they just get like all scrunched up. And sometimes you have kind of weird border behavior. I'll show you in a second. Again, they have a two-step process of adding. You kind of, an example is MKCircle, which is a shape in Apple's UI or MKKit. You can kind of make a circle with the radius, and then afterwards you can render it, give it a stroke width, give it a color, give it all that information. So one cool thing is if you have something like this overlay here, this is actually a screenshot from Airbnb's app because they did a really good job at implementing this. And here are more screenshots as you zoom out. This is showing you where a host lives. If you zoom out a little bit, the overlay gets a little bit smaller, as you can see. And if you zoom out further, then the overlay switches to become an annotation. And then if you zoom out further, the annotation isn't going to change size anymore because it's an annotation. And this kind of prevents the overlays from disappearing if you zoom out too far, and kind of makes them look a little nice. I don't really agree with their white border, but that's just me. And as you can see in the left two pictures where it's an overlay, you can see the border looks a little bit thicker on the other one. This is, again, kind of a weird artifact. When you kind of zoom in and out, it changes that border width to be a little bit bigger when you zoom out. And you can manually switch that too as you're running through the renderer for overlay callback from the Apple Maps. You can kind of change the border width and make it look like it doesn't get thicker as it zoom out and things like that. So this is my first cool thing that you can do. Let's see. Now I'll talk a little bit about Google's markers and overlays. They're way simpler than Apple's overlays and annotations. A marker is like an annotation, and all you have to do to add it to your map is just make this marker class and set the map equal to the map that you're working with, and it just adds it for free. The only problem is it is super easy and it doesn't do any efficiency like Apple Maps, where it only shows the annotation and loads it when it's being displayed. So potentially if you have like a lot of annotations or a really big overlay, it could cause some slowdowns there. But overall, it's way easier for regular applications. So the map views have lots of delegate callbacks, mostly like map loading, map finished rendering, where the user is. But the most interesting ones, I think, are about map movement. So Apple's MapKit has two big ones: region will change and region did change. Google has equivalents: map view will move, map view idle. But Google Maps also has another one: map view did change at camera position. Did change at camera position gets called continuously while you're panning or while you're zooming. So you can put stuff here that you want to run very frequently, but I'd recommend against anything, anything large. It's going to slow down your application. On Apple's region did change documentation, they claim that it also is called as you scroll many times, but it doesn't really do that. It only gets called when you finish zooming or when you finish moving, unless you explicitly call set region and change the region. Then it will call that more often. So as you can see, these aren't really that intense. They don't really give you that much control over the zoom, pan, and gestures that you have. Google's map view will move. The variable there is actually a gesture bool. So they'll tell you whether or not the map was moved or will be moved via a gesture or via like a programmatic map region change. But that's all they give you. So that's where we come to overriding the zoom and the pan gestures. So why would I do this? Well, first and foremost is you can get a locking zoom feature pretty easily. Second of all, you can get more knowledge about these gestures and their states, and you can make your own callbacks or blocks to make your map kind of do exactly what you want. Now, I guess, why would you do locking zoom? I've worked at these companies that require that because they're, transportation companies. They have a view in the middle of the map that's perfectly centered, and you're moving the map behind this pin. So you want to be able to zoom in and have it stay centered on the pin. Otherwise, you might zoom in and the pin's just going to like move off the coordinate you have, and it'll kind of be a weird experience. You can go to one of those like taxi app clones that isn't doing very well, and they probably have this weird zooming that doesn't really feel very good. So Google Maps can fortunately do this really easily. You just set one setting. You say allow scroll gestures during rotate or zoom. No. Only problem with that is it doesn't really give you any more control over these gestures. You don't know exactly when you stopped zooming, but not when you stopped panning. So I've implemented a cool category that can do this on Apple and Google's Maps. So here's how you would start doing it on Apple's MapKit. When you first have to kind of set scroll enabled or set zoom enabled to no, so that the zooming feature doesn't happen by default. And then you can add a pinch recognizer, a tap zoom in, and a tap zoom out recognizer manually to the map view. So here I'm just initializing them. You can see the tap zoom in is just 2 taps, 1 touch. It's one of those double tap and it zooms in. And this one is the 2-finger tap, and that kind of zooms out. If you guys are familiar with these gestures have been around since iOS first came out in 2007. So to implement these, we'll first do map pinched here. Pretty much what we do is we kind of hold on to the original region. And of course there's 3 steps to the pinch gesture recognizer. There's the begin step where we kind of initialize it. We get a scale, we get the old region, and we turn off scrolling. So in Apple Maps, locking zoom doesn't really come for free. So until you start pinching the map, you can pan around. And as soon as you start to pinch, you want the panning to stop. So if you just mark scroll enabled no, for the entirety of the gesture, it will stop panning. So then during the gesture, it gets into this else clause here, and it does some math, multiplies, divides, gets your new latitude and longitude, and sets the region at the bottom. There's a few caveats here. Just Apple Maps likes to crash for some reason at like high zoom levels. So if you start zooming out too much, it'll just crash. So I have a little span out of bounds. It's blocking that for just a magic number that stops. And then also I have set region animated no. Unfortunately, for reasons unknown to me, the animations on this kind of go a little bit slowly when you start to zoom out. And so they just start to animate very slowly, and you have no control over the speed of these animations. And if you want to play around with it, you can always change to yes and see how it looks like. I think Lyft's app actually had them as yes for a while, and you can kind of tell that like slowed down for a while. But I just turned it to no, and so you have this instantaneous like zoom out effect, which looks pretty good. Actually, I say animated no here, but I am talking about the double tap and the 2-finger tap, because when you're pinching, obviously there's no animation. So while you're zooming, you have that, and then at the end of the zooming, you just turn the scrolling back on, and you call some delegates, so or call some blocks that I have as properties. So this is kind of a way to get a little bit more granularity on what your user is doing with your map. So this is going to tell your map view exactly when the user is done pinching. And if I go to the next slide, these double tap and 2-finger tap methods return just done zooming, because you aren't pinching, you're just doing like a 2-finger tap or some other gesture. So back here I can continue to talk about the animated no. This is where it actually matters, where it kind of goes a little bit slowly. And these are also way simpler than the pinching. You just make a new region that's a little bit farther zoomed out or twice as zoomed in. There it is. And then to make this all work properly, you have to implement the gesture recognizer delegate should recognize simultaneously with gesture recognizer, other gesture recognizer. Yeah, it's long. And then they make you do it both ways because they just like felt like this would, maybe that's like whichever, the first one that hits versus the second one that hits. But this is essentially making sure that after you do a pinch, when you lift up your fingers, you're not going to trigger a zoom out because it's not what you want, obviously. So, I was able to package all of this into a great category, and if you wanted to use this locking zoom on your project, all you have to do is say MapView enable locking zoom. It's pretty sweet. Of course, to make it useful, you probably want to make a view and put it in the middle of your screen so you can, really center. But if you have any application like that, it's pretty cool and very extendable in terms of making more blocks that end like only when you pan or only when you start zooming or something like that. So that was MapView's locking zoom. Now I'm going to go through, yeah, this is essentially how you would set your done pinching block. You would put this after the enable locking zoom and just kind of say, put in the code that you want to run after you're done pinching or done zooming. So, using Google Maps. Google Maps, you apply the, you set up the gesture recognizers exactly like you would with Apple Maps. And then the targets are a little bit different. The biggest difference on this is that Google uses a different scale for their zooming. They have a logarithmic scale, so you have to do a little bit different math. As you can see down here, we got some logs. Other than that, it's pretty much the same. For the Google category, I added a pan recognizer too, so you could kind of see how that works. It adds extra delegate calls, so you can put some code to happen right when you start panning. And this pan recognizer is actually on top of the original pan recognizer that Google's implementing, so they both can get triggered at the same time. So it even looks way simpler than the Apple Maps implementation. So going to the double tap and two finger tapped, again, it's just a little bit of math. You get to add instead of and subtract instead of multiply because of this different scale here. And then, again, you have to implement the gesture recognizer, but this is pretty much the same thing. There's the pinch to zoom two finger tap, and then since I added a pan recognizer, I didn't want the pan recognizer to get recognized when I was doing my double tap and two finger tap. Those are tongue twisters. And again, you can drop this in to your Google Maps just with enable locking zoom. Pretty sweet. So now I think I'll go over a little bit about routes. So when you're making a route line, it's actually really easy. I haven't really done it with Google, but I'm assuming it's just as easy. In Apple, you make an instance of MK directions, and you just call calculate directions with a source and a destination, and it just gives you back a route that has a polyline. Add it as your overlay, and voila, you have a route. It's pretty cool. Some hacks you can do on it, since this is about map hacks. When you have your polyline returned, it's a subclass of MK multipoint, which is just a series of coordinates here, and you can actually go in there and manipulate it if you wanted to. I know at Sidecar, I was tasked with removing some route lines from inside the shared riders pickup and drop off point. And so this required kind of having the whole route made and kind of figuring out which points were inside one of these overlays, removing them, breaking this route into multiple sections, and kind of adding it back as another overlay to the map. So there's some pretty cool stuff you can do with that there. And once you have your route line, you probably want to make it look all pretty. So initially, you just have an MK polyline renderer if you want to use Apple's kind of default way of doing things. It has stuff like color, stroke, but it doesn't even have a border actually. So if you want to make your own path, you can just subclass overlay path renderer and construct your own path in there by just taking all of the points out of the polyline that's returned to you in the server call. And you can override draw map rect, add a border in the context, add all sorts of fancy things, and kind of make your route line your own. So that's pretty cool. Another thing I guess I can mention is this server call for route lines is another benefit of Apple Maps, something you get just totally for free when you're using Apple Maps. Google's gonna charge you a lot for that. So those are my MapKit hacks. I have a few links here, which is the locking zoom categories that I made, and just another good category that helps change zoom level on your Apple map views. And if you guys have any questions, let me know. Maybe I can answer them.
I'm curious about actually your process in development. When you're doing that, the category you built there.
Yeah.
And you've got, don't want it to zoom pinch when you've got the double tap and all these things. You've got, when you're dealing with all these gesture recognizers and your zooms, when you were going in to build that, did you kind of start off with like sort of an agenda of like, all right, I know I'm going to need this, but it shouldn't do this and this, or was it just kind of, well, let me do this one thing, see what it looks like, and then it's like, oh shit, I got to make sure it doesn't do this when I do that.
I think it's a lot. It's a lot of test and check because you also don't really know how all these gestures are going to interact when you start off here. So, I mean, initially I just wanted to make the pinch and the double tap and the 2-finger tap work correctly. And I wanted to have a few kind of callbacks so I knew exactly, when the zoom finished, when the pan started or something like that. And then, once I got that math in and made it like look good with one gesture at a time, then pretty much just kind of started testing all the gestures together, figuring out that one wasn't working, looking at like all the gestures and kind of figuring out which ones shouldn't be, activated together, which ones should. If I go back to the Google gesture recognizers, there's also some things that happen when you're pinching and panning. I think if you go to the original implementations of all of these, you can pinch and then like remove one finger and immediately start panning, put another finger back on, continue pinching. These are things that are a little bit limited in this approach. I was trying to also kind of make sure you could do as many of those as possible. So I think that I could have just returned like, no gestures should be seen together. But instead I was kind of only getting the ones that you really didn't want to work together, so that I think this allows, it says in the comment, if you pan with one finger and then start to pinching, this will work in just that case. But yeah, to answer your question, it's a lot of guess and check.
So what was your kind of testing method?
iPhone in hand, one gesture at a time. That was it.
Cool.
I think I saw a question over there.
With the MapKit math, the map geometry mapping.
Yeah.
You said it would crash in one place.
Yeah.
Can you? How would it crash?
So in
The span is out of bounds.
Yeah, so I think that since I was setting the region manually, I was essentially setting the region to bigger than the world, and it didn't like that, and it kind of it crashed at that point.
Yeah,
And
a lot of times we would do coordinate geometry. Rather than using coordinates, we would use the map points and map rects.
Mhm.
And then math just works.
Okay.
You don't have to worry. And then there's also, you could intersect it with MKMapWorld.
MKMapWorld.
So you make a rect, and then you intersect it with the world, and then it won't be bigger than the world. And then that would be kind of the same thing as span out of bounds.
I was talking to this guy earlier, and he comes from the Apple Maps team, so he knows a little bit about the Apple Maps. Check that out later.
I bet your spans are bigger than.
Yeah. Oh, I assume that that's what happened. My spans are bigger than the world, and I kind of found that number to kind of limit it. Also, in the apps I was using, like you didn't need to see the world, so I would limit them to even smaller than that because
I think you can't see two worlds at a time. I don't think you could see the world.
It probably limits you in the vertical space.
Yeah, and horizontal, I think it's limited too.
There's something else, yeah.
I'm making an app that uses MKMapView, and I find that the beige color scheme of Apple Maps conflicts with the color scheme of my app. Have you ever tried to change this color scheme? Have you found that possible? I've done a lot of research, and it looks like it's not possible with MKMapView.
I haven't tried to change the color scheme. Are you talking about like the color scheme of the land, just that beige?
And the colors
Land
of
colors.
streets and landmarks, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, you could probably do some serious overlay work and do something like that, maybe for a certain area. But yeah, I haven't ever thought about trying that. It's kind of like, yeah.
You use like OpenStreetMaps to do that and have your own tiles. Like
Oh yeah,
your
you
own
could
tiles.
always use a different maps, OpenStreetMaps.
Yeah, there's a competing product called Mapbox, which I've thought about using because that allows full customization of the appearance of the map.
Okay, okay.
Since this is called Map Hacks, there's something that MapKit uses called a style sheet, and the format is very, very complex. But that will style that map any way you want.
Is there any documentation for that?
Hell no. That's why he said Map Hacks. I don't even remember.
Is it only private APIs?
And you have to make another another map hacks talk.
So when you see Apple Maps and navigation start to draw more things, it's using a different style sheet. If you ever see iOS in the car, it's using a different style sheet, but it's the same map view.
Yeah.
Request that in a radar report.
So one of the things that has driven me, like I almost got like really angry when you said that the Google Maps thing actually tells you whether it was triggered by a gesture, because that's something that's driven me completely mad with MapKit. Is I just have a view controller that's full of flags that I'm trying to set and clear, and I have timers on them because sometimes the region's not actually going to change.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if that's something that you've wrestled with, and if you have any tips or tricks with those, or like if you hacked completion block kind of syntax or any of that.
That's kind of what I was doing with these locking gestures. Is on the one hand it got the locking, but on the other hand it gives me a lot of control over what gestures just happened. So I, still have some of these booleans, but I can set them with much more assuredness, because I control all of the gestures, when they start, when they end, when they're in the middle, and I can say, okay, like we're definitely zooming now. Okay, we're definitely not zooming anymore. So that's what I've found to be, the best way. Of course, I also haven't tried to do that while implementing the exact same zoom functionality. That might be just a little different. Making sure you zoom in where you, pinch and not in the middle. Yeah.
You showed that method about the routing, and that was void, but you said you could change the style of the route, how it would be displayed. So,
this method or the other one?
Yeah, exactly. No,
this
that
one?
So, no, the one you showed before that. Yes. That is a void method. So is the route automatically displayed on the map then? Or
The route comes back in the MK directions completion handler. That's a block.
Okay.
And then in there is an MK route, I think, or there's some argument in there that you can access, and that's where you, inside that completion block, is where you add your overlay.
okay.
And then after you add the overlay, you have to go to the renderer for overlay method to actually do more, fancy stuff. That's where you would initialize your subclass that overrides draw map rect to have your, customized route lines. Yeah.
You mentioned with the circle overlays. Are there any easy built-in method for editing those, like making them bigger or smaller with a pinch?
You want to make the overlay get bigger when you pinch?
Yeah, you can just make them bigger or smaller.
Well, I mean, you could definitely take the gestures that I was talking about, and instead of applying them to the map, you
Sure.
apply them to that. Or, I mean, another way is you could kind of how I said you have a pin on the center of the screen, but instead you have an overlay or a view on the center of the screen, and you can move the map behind it, and then kind of set it, and then make the overlay there.
I had this map application and it had weird crashes from VectorKit or something. Is there a way to debug these or just ignore them?
Probably a way
Favorite
to
experience,
debug.
VectorKit crashes.
He has some input on VectorKit.
VectorKit's what's the rendering engine, and if you're crashing in there are some bugs that I know of in iOS 8, and we see them at my new job all the time. But depending on what it is, it might be rendering. If you're touching it from multiple threads, it's not always so good with that.
Okay.
But there's some state in there, so that's what I often see. If it's not a known bug, it's a threading bug.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
To get the custom look and feel that I'm trying to achieve in my maps, I'm rendering them using MK Screenshotter, I think it's called,
Okay.
which renders them to a UI image. And then I'm doing custom image processing on the image to make the look and feel the way I want it.
Okay.
But the thing is, the image processing takes basically no time, but the rendering to a UI image takes a couple of seconds, even when I'm on Wi-Fi. Have you done anything have you had any
I haven't
experiences
worked
there?
in map screenshots, so I don't really
Talking
know.
about snapshot.
Snapshot?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you're
Probably
snapshotting
photograph.
the
Yep.
map.
Yep.
I've
So from a user point of view, it's you're waiting to get the map, waiting. Okay, there, now it's finally there. And that sucks.
yeah, I've had the snapshot work a little slow for me too,
I
but
could explain why.
go ahead. This is good.
VectorKit renders in the GPU. It's all OpenGL. And so it's rendering the map data that it has loaded from your cache. It renders it to the GPU. Then it has to do I/O back to memory to render it to an image. So there's a lot of I/O transfer.
Is there any
So
way to
snapshots are good for a snapshot, and it's not. That's why an interactive map is fast, and a snapshot is a static shot. And you'll want to make an animated map, I assume, since you're styling it on the fly.
Yep.
And it's just going to be rough because you're pushing things back and forth between the CPU and GPU like crazy.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
That's just not fast.
Is there any way to go in between though?
On iOS 8,
It renders on the GPU. It's so that interactive maps are fast. So even on slower devices, it renders to a GPU.
So the new Mapbox is built on OpenGL, at least the latest version, and it does all the styling. So if you really want to, I guess, take more control over the style sheet without hacking it too far, you should probably look into Mapbox. It uses OpenStreetMaps under the hood, but gives you a lot more control over the look and feel.
I guess it just costs money, right?
Yes, as all good things do.
I encourage you to file bugs on Apple. I know that sounds ridiculous, but when you work there, all you can do is do bugs on Apple. They really do look at them, especially on the Maps team. So I encourage it.
Okay.
More questions?
I'm sorry. Maybe some insight, but my current task is to capture the screenshot of MapView as fast as possible. Could you advise something for it?
Pardon me? It's just slow to do it. You're going just CPU to GPU and back.
So, and no right way.
Pardon me?
And no right way for it.
Right way?
Yeah, like the way
There's no
it,
good
it
way
should
to
be
do
done.
it.
Well, the snapshot is a non-interactive map, and that's what it's good for. And then if you're doing processing on top of that image and then want to render it again, here's the map being rendered in CPU layer, goes to the GPU, then we take a picture of it, goes back to the CPU, then you're rendering it again, and then you're saying go back to the GPU and draw again. It's slow.
Yeah, I understand the reason for it, but I'm looking for a way to do it like completely off the main thread. That would be perfect if that's possible.
That's not what MapKit is for.
Okay.
I mean, Mapbox has its styling engine, its
Okay.
style sheets. I've looked at it; it seems very nice.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So one more question. So if you have any experience in clustering, it would be great to draw a comparison between doing manual clustering on Apple Maps or using Google clustering altogether. Is there any? Which of them is better? I guess that's the question.
I haven't really used much clustering on either of them, so I don't really know which one would be better. Yeah, not qualified for that question, sorry.
Have you ever done anything with animating the size or layout of an annotation view?
Done a little bit of animations there. What is your question about?
Just generally, I couldn't really find anything in the docs about the right way to do it, other than kind of manually setting the frame or different things and hoping that the map view would kind of lay it out and size it right.
Yeah, I think it's kind of.
Maybe I could share my experience.
I'm gonna say something about. I know that with Google Maps, we did something at Luxe recently where we were kind of making animations by just kind of setting the animation for every frame. Mm-hmm. So we kind of know that Google Maps is rendering at 30 FPS, and we can kind of figure out the animation and make all the frames, cache them, and when we have an animation, we just change the image for all these frames, and it kind of gives the illusion of this animation. You might be able to do something similar on Apple Maps, maybe. You were gonna maybe say something?
Yeah. The thing I'm doing right now is I'm running the actual regular animations on the annotations, but I'm doing the job of the keeping control point at the very same point in the super view coordinate space. And it does the job for me.
Yeah, I guess, kind of making a view and mapping the view to the map's coordinate space, and then you can just do UI view animations really easily. That's another easy way to do it.
Yeah.
And when you move the map, you might see some jittering or some stuff, but I've seen that work pretty well. Any more over here? Nope. Right. Okay, great. Thanks a lot.
All right, guys. We have a video archive that we're going to open up next month. So this talk and some of the talks we've had over the last few months have all been recorded by the Amazon Web Services team in Seattle. So we got a great video archive we're going to release in a couple of days. The other thing that I want to do is next month's talk is definitely going to be over capacity, but I want to give first priority to everyone here. It hasn't been announced, but I'm going to tweet the link. It's at NSMeetup. We're going to have the Instagram developer who worked on 3D Touch speak next week or next month, and it's most definitely going to go over our limit of 200 seats. So when I tweet that link, it will probably be tomorrow, if not Friday. Get in and click and get your seat because I want everyone that's here now to get preference. 3D Touch, and he's going to speak about a few other new things just for the S-level phones that Instagram got to work with on Instagram. So if you're interested in that, check it out. It's at NSMeetup. We're also going to put the slides from this talk up. We're also going to tweet out a link to his category that he posted, which was really great. If you're interested in speaking, we'd love to hear your topics, your ideas. Please come find me. My name's Steve. My email address is all over NSMeetup.com. So if you don't want to talk today, just shoot me an email. Otherwise, there's plenty of drinks. The bathrooms are right through the doors there, and we're here till 9. So enjoy yourself, guys. Thanks for coming.